We forget that the American Industrial Revolution of the 17 and 1800s was fueled by the timber industry providing raw materials, in other words, wood products. Hello again, everyone. This is Guy Himlin with Trailkeepers of Oregon. I'm a crew leader with TKO, and this is the second of a series of training videos covering basic or introductory crosscut sawyer information. It's important to mention, however, that this material does not substitute nor qualify for an official Forest Service sanctioned sawyer training course. As you will find out, the crosscut saw world is a subject rich in history, a significantly new vocabulary for trail workers, and with lots of rules and best practices to ensure the safety of a saw team and trail visitors alike. Let's talk a bit about the long history of saws. The classic plain tooth pattern, like on a carpenter's saw, dates back to the Egyptian period, about 4,000 years ago. Their saws were made of bronze. Some 2,000 years ago, the Romans started using iron for their saws. The iron saw, forged by a blacksmith, became popular in the 15th century in Europe. During these centuries, however, the axe was still the primary cutting tool for both felling, cutting small logs, and splitting wood. Wood was the primary fuel for heating. In the USA, the crosscut came into wide usage in the mid-1800s for felling trees and bucking logs, mostly because of the emerging steel industry allowed for mass production of saws from plate steel. The emergence of the chainsaw in the 1940s and the consequent higher productivity of a sawyer replaced the use of the crosscut. But with the National Wilderness Act of 1964, the crosscut again emerged as the primary tool used in wilderness areas. There are two basic types of saws, a rip saw and a crosscut saw. A rip saw is designed to cut the length of a log. A crosscut, as the name implies, cuts across the fiber grain of a log. If you look down the cutting line of the blade, a rip saw has a square-topped tooth. The purpose of the rip tooth is to chisel the wood fiber in line with the length of the log. The crosscut tooth has a sharp point at the corners, usually filed at an angle to the line of the cut, front to back that is, so as to cut across the log fibers. For crosscut saws, there are two basic types: a felling saw, which has a curved back, and a bucking saw, which has a straight back. A felling saw is lighter in weight and narrower at the midsection. This allows for the insertion of wedges sooner than for a bucking saw. The bucking saw is stronger but weighs more. Weight can be a big factor if you're carrying the saw for any distance. Most crosscut saws are comprised of two types of teeth, cutter teeth and raker teeth. The gullet is between the two and is designed to hold the cut wood until the saw can drop that cut wood outside of the log. There's quite a bit of technical information on dimensions and angles for both the cutter and raker teeth. Competent saw filers can make your day, a saw that sings in operation. On the other hand, A badly worn saw, or one that becomes out of tune, will become a misery whip in operation. In the USA, the crosscut came into wide usage in the mid to late 1800s for felling trees and bucking logs. Newer tooth patterns, particularly with the raker designs to clear the cut noodle from the kerf, made the saw popular for the public. Most crosscut saw design innovation occurred in the late 1800s through the early 1900s, with custom tooth patterns for hardwoods versus softwoods. Antique or vintage saws came from this period and are still highly valued today, mostly because of the high carbon steel and the tapered shape of the overall saw. In the early 1900s, steelmaking with high carbon steels significantly improved the hardness, therefore the durability, of the plate steel. Adding other alloys like manganese, nickel, or chromium further improved the durability of plate steel while maintaining some ductility. Saw manufacturers would stone grind plate steels to produce double and single taper crescent or crosscut saws, also known as vintage or antique saws today. The cutting action of the teeth are critical to understand what happens as the saw cuts through the log fiber. The teeth of a saw perform three basic functions. The cutters cut the wood fibers, the rakers break the cut fibers loose, and the gullets collect and remove the fibers from the kerf. The kerf is the cut slot in a log after the wood fibers have been removed. All saws have cutting teeth, regardless of the tooth pattern, and are made up of two rows of cutting edges. They function like a series of knives, making parallel cuts and releasing the wood fibers between them. Cutters work best in brittle, seasoned wood. The weakened fiber is easily removed. A special kind of tooth, the raker, allows the cutter teeth to work more effectively with less effort. Even though the rakers don't sever fiber, they perform the other two functions of saw teeth, breaking loose the cut fiber and removing it from the log. Rakers remove material whether the saw is being pushed or pulled. When rakers are shaped properly and their depth has been set accurately, they pull out long shavings of wood, called noodles, rather than sawdust. Wet or green wood is hard to remove from the kerf because it is so resilient. The cut fiber bounces back. Even when the fiber is dislodged, it clogs a saw cutter's teeth. With a little sawing experience, you will be able to feel the difference between different logs, especially green versus dry logs, as you pull the saw during a cut. If your saw cutters are sharp and set properly, and the rakers are formed correctly and are at the proper depth, the saw will perform smoothly and cut efficiently. The pieces of bucked logs may be known by several names. Bolts are the pieces of a log which has been bucked into specific lengths, which are generally less than 8 feet or so. A billet is defined as a short piece of a log. A round is often associated with log lengths suitable to be split into firewood. You often hear more practical terminology, like the cut piece, or a carpenter's term calling it a drop. This is the second of a planned 7 short informative videos covering, at a fairly high level, the basic components of a crosscut saw program. Again, our goal is to provide enough information about becoming a crosscut sawyer for you to start your training and participating in a logout trail party. This picture is from the Wyeth Trail in the Columbia River Gorge on the Oregon side. Come join us for some crosscut saw logout fun.